you're ready. We might get a few more late arrivals, but I'd like to get started. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Peggy Leach, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Boulder County, and welcome to tonight's community conversation, where the topic is it time to change Boulder County's governmental structure? Please note, tonight's session is being recorded, and we hope to have a link to it on our website soon, if it works out. So first, a little bit about the League of Women Voters. We're a nonpartisan political organization, which means we never support candidates or parties. We do take positions on issues based on study and consensus by the membership. We are working to make democracy work for all. We envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. And the League is not for women only. We have a member right there, Neil, with his big t-shirt on there. Oh, and Frank. Where's Frank? Yeah. Okay, so anyway. Yay. So we encourage you to join the League and follow us on Facebook and check our website for upcoming events. So now let's move to our topic for tonight. We are here to both learn about the structure of Boulder County government and some possible alternatives, and to hear input from the community. To be transparent, the Boulder County League has a position on the structure of Boulder County government, and we have provided a handout that shows our position, which is on the back of the agenda. Briefly, we support increasing the commissioners from 3 to 5 because it seems like a matter of good governance and better representation. 5 commissioners would broaden the input into complex decisions and would allow for more voices to be part of the decision-making process. In addition, expanded representation could help to reflect the diversity of interests and opinions within the county, and more opportunities will be available for people of color and other diverse populations to participate in county government. But as I mentioned, we are here tonight to hear from the community. We know that opinions and comments made by participants tonight may not represent the League's position, and that's okay. You may have heard about a petition effort to get a question about increasing from 3 county commissioners to 5 on the 2020 ballot. We'll hear more about that later, and there are some petitions available here tonight if you would like to sign them. Tonight's meeting is intended to provide knowledge about Boulder County government through a respectful conversation. I will act as moderator for tonight's discussion. We will have several segments where some information gets presented, followed by a few minutes of discussion after each segment. Audience members are welcome to ask questions and share knowledge, opinions, and ideas. At the end, we will open it up for a general discussion. So the segments are the Commissioner's current role by Michelle Krasik, Deputy to the Board of County Commissioners. Current structure by Mary Reynolds, who's a League member. 3 commissioners versus 5 commissioners by Gaithia Weiss, a League member. Options for electing 5 by Celeste Landry, League member. The current petition by Gary Cooper, one of the petitioners. We're not seeing him yet, but we can talk about it if he doesn't come. And then discussion. So I realized that in our publicity about this meeting, we had also mentioned the topics of county manager and home rule, but we're not sure we have time to address those as separate segments. It could be that those topics will come up anyway during the conversation. For now, I will just say that having a county manager is not something that citizens vote on. It is a decision that the commissioners can make, no matter how many commissioners there are. Home rule, on the other hand, does require approval by the voters. And if we have time and there is interest from the audience, we can talk about this some more during the final discussion period. So here are some ground rules. Take turns, be respectful, Remember to listen, not just speak. Limit your comments to less than 1 minute. And I have so others can speak. We will also allow written questions and comments. The cards are being provided in the back, right there. So we can sort through those and find comments and questions that haven't been addressed verbally. So now I'd like to introduce Michelle Krizek, Deputy to the Board of County Commissioners, and she will start us out with some information on our current role with the County Commissioners.
Thanks, Peggy. So my name is Michelle, and I worked for the County Commissioner's Office for about 11 years now. I'm on my 4th different incarnation of County Commissioner boards, so I've had a pretty good range of experience. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
The screen so you can see. So the league asked me to talk about our current structure in the county. So this is a organizational chart. So of course the residents of Boulder County are at the top. And then all of the boxes that are this tan color are our elected officials. So Boulder County currently has 10 elected officials. So that's 3 commissioners plus the other 7 offices. What's not shown on here is each of these elected officials have their own organizations under them, but for the purposes of tonight, we just want to look at the commissioners' organization. So under the county commissioners are the Board of Health and other advisory boards and commissions. And the Board of Health is a little bit, it's a little bit of a hybrid under state statute. So the Board of Health and the health department don't report directly to the commissioners. They are sort of a separate entity, but they are part of the county organization. Folks who work for our public health department are county employees, but the Board of Health runs that organization. So that's just a little bit of an oddity. And then under here, these gray boxes are all of the different departments that currently report to the Board of County Commissioners. So administrative services, budget and finance, community services, the county attorney's office, housing and human services, land use, parks and open space, and transportation. And then these entities down here are actually legal entities that have to do with our housing authority. So they're on this, because this chart comes out of our CAF, or our financial statement, so those are on there. So that's the way the current situation is set up. One of the other issues that the league asked me to talk about is, what does a commissioner do all day? You know? So one question I get all the time is being a county commissioner a full-time job? Yes, it is. It's full-time plus. I would say our commissioners work probably an average of 50 to 60 hours a week. A lot of night meetings, a lot of meetings during the day. Their general schedule is as follows. Mondays are kind of our internal administrative day, where they have meetings with internal staff, most of the staff who work in their department, myself and other folks who work in the commissioner's office. Tuesdays and Thursdays are public hearing days, so our business meetings are at 10:30 on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. And that's where the commissioners do sort of the routine business of the county. Approving contracts, memorandums of understanding, looking at intergovernmental agreements and that sort of thing. Those happen on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. And then we also have all kinds of public hearings. The vast majority of the public hearings that the commissioners hold are land use dockets, so they're about zoning and land use in the unincorporated area of the county. But we also have other kind of public hearings. We may have a presentation by scientists at NOAA who are coming to show the commissioners data on oil and gas wells in the county, or just things like that, all different kinds of things. So that's Tuesdays and Thursdays. Wednesdays are generally set aside for meetings with all the department heads who run all these different departments. That's when they come in and they have their time with the commissioners, because we don't have a county manager currently in Boulder County. So the commissioners are the administrative head of the county. So it's like a CEO, and they're working with all of their department heads. So that's usually on Wednesdays. And then Fridays, we generally don't have a lot of internal county business going on, but that's the day that's reserved for all of the regional work that the commissioners do. So the different groups they belong to, we belong to a group called CC4CA, which is Colorado Communities for Climate Action. They have meetings on Fridays. Dr. Cog, the Air Quality Control Commission, all the different regional groups that we belong to. So generally they meet on Fridays because around the state, most commissioners don't have public business on Fridays. So it is definitely a full-time job. For the candidates here, you might want to talk to me before you decide for sure you want to do it, 'cause it's not an easy job. But that's kind of the day in the life of a commissioner. One of the other questions I get is, why aren't our commissioners more involved in sort of external things? Like, why isn't there a commissioner on the United Way board? Or why isn't there a commissioner on an urban renewal authority board or things like that? And frankly, it's because our commissioners are very busy running the county and they don't have a lot of time for those other sort of non-county type boards and commissions. So, yeah. Do you want to do questions now?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions for Michelle? Yes.
If the city of Boulder were to adopt a system similar to the county, just briefly describe what it would look like. Meaning, get rid of the city manager.
Oh, well, so I am not a municipal expert, and I worked in one city in my career, and that was the city of Dallas. But I believe then you'd have to have what's called a strong mayor, so you'd have to have somebody who would be the executive, and so that would be the difference, is you wouldn't have a city manager anymore, but you have to have somebody running the show.
So the three commissioners, what is their process from coming to a decision?
A lot of talking. I think there's a misconception that because you generally have commissioners from one political party, they agree on everything. I'll tell you that is not always true. There's a lot of coming to consensus. Being a commissioner means you have to be very collaborative because one commissioner can't do anything on their own. So I describe it as being in a sack race with two of your friends. You can't go anywhere without your buddy. And so you need to get to 2 votes. And so there's a lot of conversation, a lot of compromise, a lot of looking at different alternatives until they can get to something that they agree on.
So I asked that so we can consider if it goes to 5, will that be the same process or will that change?
So if it goes to 5, then you need 3 votes. So right now you need 2 votes to do anything, you need 3. So you still have to get 3 people to agree. You just have 5. You could get, have 5 to get 3 instead of 3 to get 2.
If you go to 5, is it or 2 at large, or are they in district, or how does that work?
So I think we're going to talk about that in one of our other, Celeste is going to cover that. There's some different options.
So I know that the commissioners have rejected putting 5 commissioners on the ballot in the past. Could you talk about some of the factors that they considered when they made that decision?
So I will tell you that the last time the commissioners were asked to put this on the ballot was just a few months ago, and they were asked to put it on the 2020 ballot, and they declined to do so because they were afraid it would cause confusion to put something on the 2020 ballot before we even had the 2019 ballot. In the past, I think there has been some discussion about that, and part of it is that they didn't know that the community was interested in it, because we hear from both sides. So that's part of this. The league talked to us several months ago, and one of the things the commissioners said is, let's have some community conversation. So Peggy nicely stepped up and organized this, and that's part of the process.
I have a question about if it is decided that it would go to 5, how would the districts be drawn? How would that be set up? How would the decision be made to do that?
So Celeste will show some maps in a little bit, and that'll help answer the question.
Michelle, you could talk about whether there's, what public process or what public input might happen in that.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know. I can't speak to that because we haven't even discussed it. We're not at that point yet.
Every 10 years, they draw the boundaries, right? So there's some process.
Well, yes, every 10 years we draw the boundaries based on census, and there is no required process for that. It's just the boundaries have to be, the districts have to be roughly equal in proportion to population. But we can talk about that more when the maps are up.
All right, so let's move on to Mary Reynolds then, who will talk more about the current structure.
So this summarizes again what Michelle just said. Any of these offices, the county offices that are in black, are under the jurisdiction of the county commissioners. And again, the commissioners are executive agents of the state of Colorado. The offices that are in red are under separately elected public officials, such as the sheriff. This is the budget for 2019 for Boulder County. Out of revenues of about $442 million, the county has allocated about $433 million into these different sectors. And as you can see, general government and health and human services gets the biggest portion. Now we're estimating that if we added 2 commissioners, we would be adding about 0.1%, or that's 1/1000th of a percent to the annual budget. So the cost of adding 2 commissioners compared to the whole budget is relatively low. Now Gaithia is going to come up and talk about some of the pros and cons of 3 commissioners versus 5 commissioners.
Unless there's any questions for Mary.
Yeah, yes.
What's the prime, could you talk a little bit about the source of income, the revenue that the commissioners have?
Yes, so I forgot to say, on the Boulder County website, there is a budget summary available. So sources of revenue, 42% of the revenue comes from property taxes. That's the bulk of it. 17% comes from intergovernmental revenue. 13% comes from sales and use tax. 20% comes from other revenues, and maybe Michelle can speak to what those other revenues are.
Yeah, a lot of that is grants that we apply for from different, either federal grants, state grants, private grants, and then there's also just some other miscellaneous things that come in, fees that aren't necessarily a tax or a fee on residents, but other kinds of fees that come in, go into that bucket.
And then 8% is still coming from flood reimbursements.
Excuse me.
Yes.
If my math is correct, 0.1% in actual dollar terms would come out to be between $400,000 and $500,000.
Yes, and that's salary plus benefit, plus a little bit extra for, contributing to another admin salary, office renovation, stuff like that.
That's a lot of money.
That's correct.
Right, it sounds different than this.
433,000. That's a
Yeah.
lot of money.
And that's just the estimate.
Yeah, and that's just an estimate. But we wouldn't know for sure, until we went down that road.
So I've made only 3 copies of the budget off of my own personal printer and circulating them down, should get around the audience. But I think mostly that will be a reminder that you'd be better off to look online because it's all micro print.
Yes, exactly.
So my name's Gaithia Weiss, and what I'm going to do is to go through various pros and cons of having 3 or 5 commissioners. And what's pro and what's con is going to be dependent on the audience perspective. So when I started to set up my talk and I listed a list of pros for 3, and then I went over the list of pros for 5, I realized I was going to be repeating myself all of the time. So I just wanted to come up with some general categories of things to think about. And my aim here, I'm not sure I'll succeed, but my aim is to keep this part neutral. And so what I'm trying to do is to kind of poke the audience and see if you can come up with some even better ideas, perhaps, so we can, at the end of my part, or also very much at the very end, when we have more information from other Celeste and things, to have a discussion. So the first category I chose was effective governance. And that under that, I think we need to think about workloads and expectations of the commissioners. So as Michelle has been discussing, and Mary, it's a pretty complex county government that we have here in Boulder County. It's a very large operation, and the 3 commissioners serve as executives, which is to say they're essentially a team of the CEOs. And so then the next thing to think about might be efficiency and distribution of decision making. And that partially is balancing having more people to do the work with the difficulty, and some questions have already come up about this, of establishing agreement between all of the commissioners. So 5 might be slower communication path than 5. The social dynamics might be more complicated. But on the other hand, more people might yield a better decision. And we have sort of a collective intelligence. And one thing that came up at the discussion that we gave this presentation already once in Longmont that I hadn't thought of was a question from somebody who is a county employee. And they were of the opinion that the county employees now lack access to the commissioners because they are so busy, and that more might help them be able to get a bottoms-up style of management in which they would feel free to contact a commissioner with how they can see from their perspective things ought to be happening. And then another thing to consider is coverage. How many people you need for a quorum, what happens if there's a vacancy. With 3, power is concentrated basically just in the hand. You need 2 for a quorum, and the vote could be dependent on one person deciding to go with the other person in a decision. You'd have more with 5. And then with 3, you might be more likely to be hindered if you had a commissioner who was ill, or they needed to recuse themselves due to a conflict of interest, or perhaps they resigned from office. And then another issue is that there's to be a steep learning curve for new commissioners. For example, in 2020, due to the term limits, there will be at least 2 of the 3 spots that will need to be filled because they'll be vacant. And that means at most, if the third person decides to continue in office, and that person has to convey, this is how we have to do things. You don't have sort of a collective memory going forward. Institutional knowledge the lack of that might hinder governance. That's a possibility. The other thing to think about might be groupthink, which might be more of a problem with a smaller group that's elected by plurality. That group of people all thinking alike and not looking at the full spectrum of possible ideas. And along with that, there are studies, and Frank Ventura might be able to expand on this if anybody has any questions, that social psychologists say that groups of 5 to 15 people are optimal for decision making. So my other large category that I picked was how is the voting public best represented? So Celeste is going in the next section going through possible ways you could divide districts and elect these representatives. But obviously some ways you would have more county accountability. If you had narrow districts or wards, you might have more personal connection to the constituents that elected you. So that next one is countywide accessibility or responsiveness to the constituents. And that also segues into how you do outreach and campaigning. If you have to cover the whole district, it might be true that you can't knock on everybody's door, obviously. And that's a different form of campaigning style than doing things that involve media and might involve money. So some things are more grassroots, some things might require more funds. And then the other thing you could get potentially with more members is diversity. And so diversity isn't just the usual things we think of gender, race, and age. We might want to consider residents. Are they urban, rural? How long have they lived in the county? Might discover economic background, their type of employment. Are they retired? Are they a student? Political affiliations would factor in. And just sort of overall, do the voters have a feeling that they can elect a representative that they identify with? So that's the end of my section, and next we can go on to Celeste. If you have any questions.
Yeah, so is there discussion on it?
Are there requirements within this proposal that Cooper is asking us to sign that describe how the 5 might be elected, or how long their terms would be and stuff like that? Or is this just yes or no, 3 or 5?
No, there's something legal, and somebody else will have to explain this in more detail later, but as I understand it, to put this proposal onto the ballot, there's 2 parts. So one is a yes/no, and then the second one gives 2 choices of potential ways they might be elected, and you get to vote for one of those 2. Okay? So that there is that complication to it. Yes.
Are there any other cities in Colorado that have more than 3 that we could look to?
Counties, yes, and
We have a slide that could.
we have a slide coming up on that. So I think that will be covered. Is there anything else? Yes.
If the city would have to have a strong mayor, why doesn't the county?
Well, having a county manager is an option either way. I mean,
No,
you
without
could
a
say that
county.
would help your workload and you could stick with 3. You could say, because it's 5, and then getting those 5 to agree and do things, that's when you need a county manager.
No, the question is define and take a step. Oh, okay.
So I'll also say that essentially what you have is a strong mayor, like not 3 of them.
Three strong mayors.
The strong mayor.
Or you
Like
could
less
be in it.
strong. The state, state determines the county commissioner. So,
Okay.
unless you go to Denver or Broomfield, where you have
City, county.
a city county,
Yeah.
you can't have it.
Oh, okay.
Is everybody hearing that?
So that's an elected mayor, which if you had a county manager, what, that is actually just not something we decide, the commissioners can decide. They can decide that tomorrow. We are going to hire ourselves a county manager. And as I said, that could go in either direction. You can also set things up differently. I was looking at some of the other counties in terms of how they function, and some of them function with a definite group decision, and some function but with division of power. So they say, okay, this commissioner will be in charge of finance, this commissioner will be in charge of social services, this commissioner will be in charge of parks, and then they have to come together to vote on these things that the other persons have worked on, but they don't apparently, I mean, I don't know in detail. I'm not sure that they get into, they kind of divide it up so they won't eat. It's not like 3 CEOs making every single little decision.
How is it presently set up in terms of division responsibility among the commissioners?
Michelle would have to answer that, I don't know.
So our commissioners work collaboratively. They don't, so what Gaby was explaining is Arapahoe County is a good example. Arapahoe County has 5 commissioners, and every year they decide which commissioner will effectively be the head of each department. So when that slide that I had up there that showed all those departments, all the commissioners don't meet with all those department heads together. One sort of runs that department, but then they do have to come together as 5 to do any kind of voting. Our commissioners don't do that to that extent. They do, however, have specialties. So for example, when Cindy Domenico was a commissioner, she was very involved in human services. She served on several state boards about human services. And that was partly because she had an affinity for it and she was very interested in it, and partly because we needed somebody to do that work. And so every year there is a little bit of that division because you can't, for example, have 3 representatives from Boulder County on the Dr. Cog board. You can only have 1. So they do divide up a little bit, but generally they work collaboratively as a trio of executives.
And I think one thing to remember is our counties in the state are pretty different in terms of size. Some are huge and some are very tiny. And so I think some of the ones that divide power probably don't really have much of anybody below the commission level or as much of a bureaucracy as we are able to have, say for something, we think something like open space, we have a lot of employees, a strong manager, and then the commissioner above that.
I think you have to clarify, though, that even when they, whether it's 3 or 5, they can choose to divide up and specialize.
Right.
But legally, according to statute, they can only act as
Yes.
a commission.
Right. All the
And
votes
so
have to
what-
be collective.
They
Yes.
all have to vote on it. And I'm
Right.
only putting my long time ago county attorney hat on there. They have to act as a commission. So you would just end up with some of the commissioners maybe knowing a little bit more about the subject matter of the decision, but at the end of the day, all of them, whether it's 3 or 5, have to be.
And in the county system, as opposed to the city strong mayor system, then if you hired a county manager, that person is completely under the commission and only takes action by direction of a vote from the commission, basically. It's an employee person, it's not a decision-making person.
In the current county system, what happens if a county commissioner drops dead tonight?
So that is set forth in statute. So if a county commissioner, if there's a vacancy, for example, then the party of that commissioner has 10 days to fill that vacancy. So they do a vacancy committee and they have somebody who's then elevated. So that's happened in the past. We've had a couple times, I believe it's 10 days. It's very quick. So we don't really have very long vacancy. And then the commissioners, if that would happen in another one of the elected offices, the commissioners then select, so the assessor or treasurer.
Question?
I was wondering, what happens if a commissioner becomes controlling? I don't know if that's the right word, but if people in the district aren't happy with that commissioner, if they want to get rid of that commissioner, how is that done?
Is there a recall provision? I don't know.
There is, it's all set out in state statute.
So,
But could I add, is under, right now, under the current system, you have 3 commissioners that you all vote for. So if there's one commissioner that's going off the rails, you have 2 other commissioners that you can call up and say, watch out, Charlie's having a hard time. So, it's a little bit different than if you had like a ward, for example, in a city.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next section with Celeste. We'll talk about how commissioners could be elected.
All right, before we move to the next section, I just wanted to mention that we invited all of the county commissioner candidates for 2020 to be here, and they all 3 are here tonight. Claire Levy, Jonathan Singer, and Marta Luchin.
Raise your hands.
So, yeah, there you go. Yeah. So we wanted them to hear what everybody thinks in case they get elected next year. So.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to stand here so that everybody on this side can see the maps also. First of all, I want to say we're talking about possibly going from 3 to 5 commissioners. That's not an option for every county. That's only an option for counties with over 70,000 people. And that would mean 11 counties in the state of Colorado right now. So I want to thank Michelle for helping us get these maps that I'm going to show you, and I need to read these disclaimers first. They were produced at our request, and they're just for illustrative purposes. They're based on 2010 census data, so they will not be accurate now or in 2020. They do not represent an endorsement by the county commissioners to move from 3 to 5 commissioners, nor any endorsement of a specific configuration. They have not made a decision to place this on a future ballot. Michelle said that they decided not to a few months ago put it on the ballot now, but we have a lot of time before the 2020 ballot, so they could still do it in the middle of the, in March of next year, or, there's some deadline they have to do it by, but there's plenty of time. And I will show you the current map, but that will also change because the population will change after the 2020. Okay, I mentioned that this is based on 2010 census data, so it's going to look different. The total population for each of the districts has to be relatively consistent. These maps were drawn so that the population doesn't differ by more than 5%. And it says each district should have approximately 59,000 residents. That's for the 5 district maps. For the 3 district maps, you'll see it's more like 95,000 people. And then one important thing to note is that the unincorporated plains areas and mountain areas do not have enough population to form a district all by themselves. That's why they're rural, right? And then the second thing to point out is that under a 5-district plan, Boulder is too big to be in a single district, and Longmont is too big to be in a single district, so they would have to split up. So let's take a look at the current commissioner maps. We have these 3. This is the Boulder, the blue is the Longmont, and the green is the Lafayette-Louisville. And if we stay with 3 commissioners, it will look much like this. If you can see the numbers here, District 1 has the largest population, and District 2 has the smallest population, so some population will have to move to make them more equal. Okay, let's move on to the concept maps. This is the first concept map. Concept 1 puts the mountains north and south all in one area, but it doesn't include all of the rural area, but a lot of it. It includes all the rural area, but it doesn't, it has to have some of Boulder and Gun Barrel, South Boulder, Superior. So there will also be some urban areas inside of a District 1. The blue district has only Boulder residents, but not all the Boulder residents. The green district includes part of Boulder, part of Louisville. The blue district has only Longmont, and the orange is Lafayette, Erie, part of Longmont. Okay. So So we can come back to these if you have questions also, but let's go look at concept 2. So this one divides Boulder north and south into 2 separate districts. And Longmont is in one big district, and then the rest of it is with the mountains and some other rural areas. And Superior is with Lafayette and Louisville here. Okay. And it'll be an interesting process whether it's 3 or 5. More interesting if it's 5.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. So this one is most like what we have now. And you've got the south part of Boulder County, southwest part of Boulder County, and part of the city of Boulder. You've got the city of Boulder all by itself in the red in the middle. I think by now you can probably figure out what's going on. I don't know if I need to walk you through every step, but let's take a look at that one.
So I just had a quick question is, if we go to 5, how is that decided what the boundaries of these things would be?
It's kind of interesting that the people who get elected to these positions get to choose their own boundaries. Jonathan Singer pointed that out.
Is there a name for that process?
His first name's Jerry.
Very funny.
Okay, let's move on. So right now in statute, I mentioned that if you go to 5 commissioners, you have to be a bigger county, 70,000 or more. Right now, statute allows 4 options. So we're going to go through the 4. The petition only has 2 options on the petition, which makes sense, which would appear on the ballot, which makes sense because if you have 3 questions, then you get into not getting a majority on one of them. And I can talk a lot about that. If anybody, Gaithia and I are head of the voting methods team for the League of Vote Voters, so we can certainly go there if you want us to. Okay, so let's talk about those 5 options. Did you have a question?
Well, I was thinking about those maps. Would you mind going back just a moment? Some of the lines seem straight, some, is it water boundaries?
Sure. So
Does it include watershed areas?
So remember, these are voted on, so they have to be by precinct lines, because you can't have half of a precinct in one district and half of a precinct in the other district. So that's how the lines are drawn. These are our precinct boundaries from 2010.
Who draws those?
The clerk and
precinct
recorder's office draws them, and they try to base them on having the same number of people in each precinct.
So is that the first step then? Coming up with districts, is first the county clerk has to come up with precincts?
Right,
Have
so
census?
the county clerk is not required to redraw precincts based on the census data as we are for the districts, but you have to have those precincts as the basis, because you can't, as I said, you can't have half a district in one precinct and half in another.
So it seems a little strange. When I worked for King County in Washington, it seemed like there were national boundaries. Individual commissioners set them up, and the district boundaries related to environment, land use, population, and demographic information. So it was an independent committee that established that, not a politician that had authority over that, compared to perhaps a clerk.
I think it could change here. We could change the statute. It's in statute, right, Jonathan?
It's a state statute, so it has to
Yeah.
be changed by the legislature.
Yeah. Yes.
I would point out that at the state level, Colorado just in this past has now set up commission, right, for state, but not the county commission, but in general. So that precedent exists, and you could move to that system, but that doesn't exist now. I think we're behind. I used to live in Washington State too. I think.
Okay, let's talk about the 4 options. So this option is like what we have right now. Right now, we only have 3 commissioners, but you get to vote on all 3 of them, but they have to live in their district, their particular district. If we went to 5 elected at large, then we would have 5 districts represented, but you would still get to vote in 5 contests. Okay. The second option, 5 districts, but each commissioner would be elected by their district. So if you can see here, the blank indicates that you would get to vote for that person. So before there were 5 blank and you got to vote for all 5. Here you would only get to vote for the 1 commissioner in your district. And I like to call this a ward system because that's typically what a ward means. You live in the ward, you elect the person from that ward. And now you get to vote for commissioners every 2 years because you would only vote for 1. You would only vote every 4 years for a commissioner. And that was the first option on the petition. So that's the first option on the petition that Gary's going to talk about. Option C is 3 districts, or 3 wards, let's call them, and then 2 elected at large. And those 2 people who are elected at large can live in any of these 3 districts. They could all live in the same district as another person. So you might have some concentration of people from a more politically active area, say. And you get to vote in every 2 years because you would vote for District 1 and number 4 in 1 year, and then 2 years later you would vote for person number 5, commissioner number 5, okay? So this is the second option on the petition, and these 2 options, option B and C, are both district representation or ward options. Okay, let's look at the last one. This one is, they have 3 districts, just like we do now, but we would add 2 more commissioners who could come from anywhere. So you would still get to vote for 5 commissioners. You'd still get to vote every 2 years. It would be what we have now plus 2 at-large commissioners. And one thing about this is, Matt Jones, for instance, is our current county commissioner. He had to resign his state senate seat when he won the race to be county commissioner, and he couldn't run in another district unless he moved. So if we had some at-large ones, he could finish out his term and run 2 years later, right? He wouldn't have to wait for his district to open up. He could run at any 2 years because there'd always be at least 1 seat open. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the ballot. There are 2 ways to get on the ballot. One way is via petition, which is what Gary Cooper and his friend are heading up. And the second way is to get referred by the county commissioners. And both of these have happened in Colorado. And they both seem to work, and everything's good with that. One thing that's kind of interesting is there are only 2 of the 4 options on here. They're both the ward options. If the commissioners don't like the ward options and they would rather have the at-large options, they could put a competing petition, a competing ballot measure on the ballot next year. And in that case, whichever of the options got the most votes, assuming both of the ballot measures passed, would end up being the way we would elect our people. Yes, Mike?
Celeste, can you elaborate a little bit on number 2, the referred by the county commissioners?
So many things are referred, but most ballot measures that go on the county ballot are referred by the county commissioners. For instance, when they wanted a flood tax, flood recovery tax, that was put on the ballot by the county commissioners. It just takes 2 votes. That's great. Okay. Okay, I'm pleased.
Trustee Rizzo.
Yes.
I was wondering, why would the number 5, I mean, you've got the early statistics that say, 5 to 15 is an ideal number. Why not 8? Why not 10 for maybe equal representation of everyone in the county?
So I think that they like 3 or 5 if they're going to be CEOs, right? Because how many you don't want 10 CEOs.
Too many cooks.
And Denver has 13, if you count the mayor on their city council, and Broomfield has 11 if you count the mayor on their city council. So, but they also have municipal powers, and municipal home rule is more powerful than county home rule. So, and they tend to have a city manager too. So, I think the idea is efficiency, basically.
Well, and the other thing to point out is the only things that are required, that are allowed by state statute is 3 or 5. That's the only thing that we can do in Colorado.
Unless we do home rule, which is.
Nope. You can only do 3 or 5 even if you have home rule.
I think we think that might be right.
Okay.
I think she might be right.
Which makes me feel good.
Yeah,
So 3 or 5 are your only choices if you're a county.
But we have.
Unless we change the statute.
Yeah, we have legislators, and I was talking to one today about, changing the way we elect county commissioners, so who knows? These things might change. Okay, if they're, yes.
So that makes me wonder, if it is 3 to 5, what is the most effective number of voters to elect the commission? Is it better for good government? I mean, we already know the number with the number of people, but with the number of elected officials, about the constituents, I mean, some would have over 100,000 constituents. That would be a lot of people. So what would be good government as far as the number of people?
So this is why small counties can only have 3 commissioners, because if you have 1,500 people in your county, 3 commissioners is probably enough. But I don't know the answer to what is the best number. Probably people would tend to say the bigger the number, the better the representation. Boulder is the 7th or 8th most populous county in the state. So there's a good argument for going to 5 for that reason. If you're interested in proportional representation, then there are other methods that are not allowed right now by state statute, and that's what I was talking to the state legislator about today. And that's a different topic. Yes.
Can you give us an idea how Jefferson County and Weld County and Larimer County have their makeup of commissioners?
So I'll just go through like the top 5 or 6, and I'll make sure I say all the ones. Denver has a city-county government, it's special. El Paso has 5 commissioners with a county administrator. Arapahoe.
And they're elected all by district, correct?
Single
we have, Did you want to know that part too?
Yeah.
There gets to be a lot of detail here. Yes, they're elected by wards. Jefferson County has 3 commissioners with a county manager. We just said Arapahoe has 5 wards. Yeah. And El Paso has 5 wards and a county administrator. Adams has 5 commissioners. Where am I?
You're our number, I can see.
Yeah. Okay, Adams has 5 commissioners.
Elected at large.
Elected at large. And they have a county manager.
Yes, we do.
I don't have that written down here. Okay. Larimer has 3 commissioners, and they have a county manager. Douglas County has 3 commissioners, and they have a county manager. Then we get to Boulder. So every county bigger than us has either 5 commissioners or with or without a county manager, or 3 commissioners with the county manager. So they in effect have 4 or 5 or 6 people.
In the threes, are they elected by ward or are they elected by at large?
So
They're at large. They're just like
Jefferson
we
is
are.
like us,
Okay.
although they tried to get a petition going to change to 5 and they were not successful. Larimer, I don't think they've tried to change.
What is Weld?
Weld is a home rule county. Weld and Pitkin are the two home rule counties. They both have 5 commissioners. Weld elects them 3 wards plus 2 at large. Pitkin, they elected originally by ward, and then they changed to districts, but elected at large, so from wards to at large, after one election. Okay. Yes?
I don't know if anybody knows, but is Larimer County chomping at the bit to have 5 commissioners like we seem to be?
I don't know. I know that John Kafalis is a new commissioner, and he also had to resign his state senate seat, and it got filled by a vacancy committee in order to run. So if I were in Larimer, I might be.
I don't think there was a vacancy.
There was.
No, there wasn't. He replaced.
I think Apollos was term limited.
Yeah, he was. I think he was.
Oh,
He was term limited.
I thought I saw the name of his replacement. Okay, my mistake. Thank you.
I guess what I would say, I do a lot of work with the Larimer County manager, and I have not heard any discussion that they are looking to go to 5 at this time.
But they have a county manager, which is different, right?
I'll check with the Larimer County lead tomorrow.
I mean, there might be in the community, but in terms of the organization.
Do you want to say how you're different from a county manager?
Sure. So a county manager generally, when I had that slide up there that had all the different department heads, in most counties, and each one is set up a tiny bit differently, but in most counties, all those department heads would report to that county manager. And in Boulder County, those department heads do not report to me. I'm more like a chief of staff, if you will. So I work with the commissioners, I run the commissioner's office, I do policy work with the commissioners, but I do not manage those departments. In most county manager or county administrator, and in Colorado, manager and administrator are really the same thing. In some states, they're very different, but in Colorado, there's really no distinction between those two. All that administrative function would go through that county manager. In some counties, like in Larimer, for example, is a good example, the budget reports to the county manager. In some other counties with county managers, budget and finance report directly to the commissioners. The county attorney in some cases reports to the county manager. In other cases, it reports directly to the commissioner. So the commissioners have a lot of latitude how they set that county manager up and what that county manager's role is. People have asked me, well, if we went to a county manager, what would it look like? And I don't know because we haven't really had those conversations, but I think what it looks like could evolve over time. What happens right off the bat, since we haven't had a county manager, might be different from what it would look like 10 years from now after we've had a manager in place.
Yes, I do have a question. I was wondering, what prevents us from making more appropriate positions in our government? For example, we have an attorney general that would be elected, and so then that person would be accountable to the voters while the others are appointed. So I was just concerned about lack of representation. For example, we don't have chief equity officer in government to speak for the people that serve under them, so, or for the underserved or the minority, people that could vote to represent that group in government. How could we use this process to place someone there that could represent them fairly? I mean, if instead of just 3 to 5 people and no accountability for that, no requirement to speak for the underserved.
So the county organization is set by state statute. So we have elected officials that are all set by state statute. I will say that in Boulder County, we do have a diversity and inclusion manager who reports to the commissioners. It's in the commissioner's office, and that's where we do that kind of work to make sure that we have an inclusive organization.
And is that person elected?
Under state
That's
statute.
the problem, they're not really representing the people.
Under state statute, we can only have the elected officials that we do. So keep in mind that counties are, in Colorado, are very sort of weaker form of government. We are an arm of the state. We only have the ability to do things that the state gives us. So we can't just decide to change. It has to be in state statute.
But there is a little bit of an exception to that with county home rule. So Weld and Pitkin County, they've done things like they don't elect their surveyor. They appoint their surveyor instead. They don't elect their treasurer. The treasurer reports to the county manager. I mean, I don't know the details, for, I'm generalizing a little bit, but treasurer, surveyor, and coroner tend to be appointed offices. And in fact, if you read our position on the back of the agenda, it mentions a little bit that topic.
But let me just say, so everybody has the same understanding, home rule in Colorado for counties is not the same as home rule for cities. We cannot do all the things that cities can do, even if we have a home rule charter. So it's more of a structural home rule. We can change the elected officials. The commissioners can set their own salaries, which right now their salaries are set in state statute. There are things we can do like that, but we cannot, for example, the one I get all the time is ban fracking. We cannot ban fracking if we have, if we're a home rule county, because we can only still do the things that the state allows us to do. So it's very different than the cities.
And there was a petition effort a couple of years ago to become a whole rule county so that we could ban fracking, basically, but it ended up, I think they realized that wasn't possible. Yes.
That was because they were trying to create this
natural rights.
Not just the climate bill of rights.
Natural
but
rights.
The community bill.
Natural law.
The community rights
Yeah.
charter. And is it because we're an arm of the state? Is that Dillon's rule? Is that the doctrine that says the state has dictation over the municipality or the county?
I just know that's in the red books that say CRS on the front of them. So, I mean, we don't have unlimited power, even if we were home rule, because in Colorado, I'm from Illinois. In Illinois, counties are very different. They're much stronger forms of government. They can do a lot more things. In Colorado, that's just not the way we were set up. I think most western counties are more in Colorado than counties in the east. Most of the states here.
Because it was that Judge John Dillon that said, a municipality or a county is just an arm of the state, like a child is to a parent. They have those rights. So if you think that's fair, continue that.
Thanks for that reference.
So one thing that we can do with home rule, I think, though, is fix what I think is a big aspect of governance of the people, by the people. We can fix how we elect the commissioners, and we can fix the gerrymandering problem. So you've already noted that commissioners can essentially pick where their boundaries are. Commissioners could say, oh gosh, we want to put those two existing commissioners in the same district so they wouldn't be able to both run, so they have to run against. There's all kinds of things that can happen. And we also don't get the representation that we could get with a good proportional representation scheme where we would, Boulder has so many different political philosophies. And so you've got some slides. I wonder if you can go through the slides that the voting methods team has worked on for years on the governance aspects for the people, because I think home rule is definitely something that would make 5 commissioners in particular, which I think is a good idea, much more flexible, much better in lots of ways. And as you say, it could eliminate we could, if the people wanted, change how the coroner was elected and stuff.
Could we do that after Gary talks?
Well, I just see it as a central aspect of governments, and gerrymandering is
Right.
So
but they have to keep the numbers. They can't gerrymander the numbers.
But 5 is fine.
even
3 or
with
5
three.
would both be
Yeah,
fine.
they're fine, because they
Neil,
they can't fool around with the
But you
numbers.
don't have to have districts, they could all
But the
be elected
boundaries.
at large.
Let me just speak just really quickly about how the districts currently, so I worked for the commissioners in 2010, so I was there when we did the last boundaries. So there are a lot of requirements for how the districts are set up, and when you only have 3, there's not a lot of, you can't do a lot of differences because they have to be fairly equal in size, and there's language in the statute about, you know, you need to keep communities together and those kind of things, and you have to follow precinct boundaries. So you're absolutely right, the commissioners do make that decision. But the difference between the pre-2010 maps and the post-2010 maps was very, very small because we had population growth both in Boulder and in Longmont and in East County, so they didn't move around much. You're right, they get to decide, but there's criteria, and you know, we have elected officials who believe in good representation. They don't want to draw the maps so that you can have, for example, 3 commissioners who all lived in Longmont, right? They want to have that, our historic Boulder district, Longmont district, East County district. So you're right, they could do it, but it's not unlimited.
But beyond that, there's just all kinds of other ways that proportional representation could.
Well, and Celeste and I are
move forward.
having a friendly disagreement about whether, with a home rule charter, we could go to proportional representation because it's not allowed under the state. And
It
the way
is allowed under the state, and I've asked Dwight Shellman, who's the guy who knows this stuff at the Secretary of State's office, and he wrote a very clear letter that said it did.
Well, so I have a question out to our attorney's office as to whether that could be done under home rule or not. And I haven't gotten the answer yet, but I will definitely share it with Celeste when I do.
Can we follow the agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to follow the agenda, which is Gary Cooper next, and then we're open for
Oh, I'm sorry, I
normal
forgot that.
discussion. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just introduce Gary. He's become an expert on the process to put a question on the ballot asking voters about increasing from 3 to 5 commissioners because it's not entirely crystal clear as written in statute. He has spoken to the county commission on this issue multiple times and is one of the co-petitioners for the petition currently collecting signatures. Gary also may be known to many of you because his own name appeared on the ballot in 2018 for county commissioner from District 3. Or you may know him because he is a local area real estate broker. Welcome.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for bringing this topic up and allowing me to speak in it. Excuse me. And I got to know Celeste in 2018 because we started that petition, or this petition, in 2018. Didn't have the time to fulfill it, but we went ahead, had a lot of people. We had a meeting with the county commissioners. There were 35 or 40 people there. Celeste spoke, Jeff Cahoon was there. I don't think
wasn't
Peggy
there
was
last
there,
year.
but people of both parties, unaffiliated, the Democrats and Republicans, the League of Women Voters, have been in favor of this. Thank you so much.
Don't say it never gave you any.
Does that include a cold?
No, I did not do that.
Well, anyway, at that meeting, we didn't have enough time to get the signatures done, so I elected to forward it to the county commissioners to see if they would put it on the ballot. And we were on the agenda. We had 35 or 40 people there. There wasn't a single person that was against the ballot issue, not one. And as I say, it was a broad mix of the population of both of the political parties and the unaffiliated. And the commissioners elected not to put it on the ballot. I was a little disturbed at the way they commented on the quality of the people in Boulder. You can go to the August 2nd meeting of last year and see that online. Use your own opinion of how they categorized us as possible selectors of the commissioners. So moving on, so now we're here. And having gone through the process last time, I finally got a chance to go through the muddy water that is getting this on the ballot. And it's muddy water. But we do have it on, ready to go. And for all of you, in particular, some of you are interested in having larger districts, I would really prefer that we just went with the current districts and turned them into a by decision vote, district vote of the population. Only the person in the district gets to vote their candidate to office. The state statute won't let us do that. We have to go to 5. And after we go to 5, then we can do whatever we want in terms of going back to 3 or moving through the process. But the state is in charge of this process. I've spoken with Jonathan one other time. I don't know if he remembers. It was Cinco de Mayo last year. And at that time, he mentioned that he thought he could support this. He hadn't seen the petition when we talked about it.
I already signed the petition. So
You've already signed it. Thank you.
I signed it, so.
And thank you. Right now, we have until November 18th, Fitzpatrick Molly, right?
Yeah.
Was kind enough to bring to our attention. I thought we only had 128 days to circulate the petition in order to get our 14,000 signatures. We're really looking to get 25,000, but 14 is required to forward it to the ballot. Yes, sir.
Is that a percentage or what is it?
It is a percentage. It's 8% of the total vote for the Secretary of State in the last election. In 2018, the last Secretary of State election was in 2016, and at that time we only needed 10,500 signatures. There was quite a lot larger turnout this year for the Secretary of State, so we're up to 14,000. We've got about 50, maybe 60 people right now who are out circulating the petition, and we've got several thousands of signatures already in place. We've missed kind of a good opportunity because I understand that a lot of people are a little bit uncomfortable approaching someone on the street and seeing if they can encourage them to participate in the process. I'm not one of those people. When I was 18, I sold door-to-door encyclopedias in some of the worst parts of Denver. So I got over that a long time ago. So at this point in time, the difference between the possibilities, we have the two opportunities right now. First, the people of Boulder. This is again a petition that is allowing the people of Boulder to make a decision on how they want to be governed. And I kind of like that. I want to have that voice myself. So right now, the first question is, do you want to move it from 3 to 5? And it's yes or no. If there are more people who vote no, then it's over. The second position is we want 5 commissioners who shall be resident of districts and who shall be elected only by the voters who reside in their district. So at this point, we have 3 commissioners, 3 districts, and they're all voted at large. That means that every citizen votes on every commissioner. So that says that we're in Boulder right now, but the people of Longmont and Lafayette, Louisville have a decision on your commissioner. On the same token, the people in Longmont, Boulder, and Lafayette have a decision on their commissioner. That doesn't seem like an opportunity for district representation, where I have a voice to talk to the person who is representing me. So we would like, I believe, I want to change it. You know, I want to be able to go. Right now we have had 330,000 citizens in Boulder County. So the groups will be about 65,000, 66,000 in each district. What's a whole lot better than trying to get to 110,000 voters and having them make a decision on that. So we'd like to change this so that we can get a little bit more, I call it diversity, other people don't think that way.
Local control, right?
Well, yes, we want you to control who's running your life and impacting our entire county. The reason I got involved in this is because when I was running for commissioner, and I've been active in politics in Boulder County for the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of people are disappointed in how the county is running. They just don't feel that they are heard, have an opportunity to communicate with the commissioners right now. So with that in mind, they kept talking about a commissioner's 3 to 5 movement that has been talked about and talked about and talked about. And they've only talked about it and then given it to the commissioners, and the commissioners refused to put it to the ballot. So we're putting it on the ballot now. So the second opportunity is 3 commissioners in the district, such as we have now, and then just add 2 at large. Again, my belief is that that essentially says that you're going to have the largest politically oriented district affiliated with 2 at-large candidates who are generally going to be selected by that. And so the other 2 may have a little bit of a voice, but I think we have a much more effective chance if we have 5 different commissioners. I believe that one of the positives is that right now, when I ran for commissioner, I'm not sure when the last time there was a District 3 commissioner candidate that wasn't Democrat. Because it's common knowledge that you have to get your butt kicked. So, you know, it was an exercise in exercising my free will, and I'm willing to try to see if I can make some changes in the world. So my belief is that in the smaller groups, we will have an opportunity to encourage a larger number of quality candidates to come forward, because the chances that they would have it at winning an election are going to be much expanded. And so we will have a different viewpoint, I believe, in a number of the districts, and give you a chance to express your views.
Okay, so Gary, can we take questions now?
Sure. Okay, go ahead. Let's see, I have a hand here. Yes.
You had a hand over here, too.
Yeah, just was right in my slide assignment
What
already.
are the criteria for being a petition carrier?
You have to live in the state of Colorado, and you have to be 18.
Registered voter.
I don't think you have to be. To sign the petition, you have to be a registered voter in Boulder County. And as I say, it is a nonpartisan issue, and I think that I want the citizens of Boulder to vote this in. And I don't want to dictate it. I want you guys to pick. Let's see. You go ahead, sir.
2 questions. Why was it where you put vote for 1, why wasn't it maybe set up on a ranking up to 4 and then people could check which they preferred? Would that help satisfy or whatever people wanted? You know, first and then
Well, to
second?
answer that question to start with, rather than go to the second.
Okay.
The state government dictates how this petition looks. I didn't dream this up. This came up, this is required by the state of Colorado to have this language here, yes or no, and then we have to offer 2 of the 4 choices that Celeste was so kind to bring forward to you, and I chose the only 2 that have district representation in it. At-large, I'm not a fan.
And what are the other 2 then?
There are
She talked
these 2,
about
and
it
then
earlier.
there's 5 at large, or 3
5 at
districts
large.
with you have to live in the district, and 2 at large, except all of them are still at large. So the second one is 5 at large.
And
Second
then
question.
that leads to my second question. How can we guarantee the qualification of people that run for the commission? You wouldn't want to end up voting for, you know, some extremely wealthy person, or, I mean, who could just take advantage of the political process. Someone that we know that would be capable and qualified to do the job.
Well, one of the things that, in order for you to do your vote, you have to do your own homework. Whoever's running, you have to make a decision on whether they're a quality candidate.
Come to a league forum.
Come to a league. You know, see how many people you can meet, such nice people.
I guess you asked for tax.
Come to the candidate debates.
Exactly. See,
So
Kevin, go.
my question is, if we go with the second option where 2 of them are still voted for at large, don't we automatically kind of come up with the same thing we have now, where they're all voted for by the city of Boulder?
In my opinion. But again, that's a decision that the voters of the county get to make.
at least
not me.
you have the potential with the second one that there are two people there that are potentially elected not from the city of Boulder. You have three that are essentially those three remain the same.
That's like a ward system, right?
There'll be three districts with two at large. And again, the possibility of all three of the districts having a higher number of potential candidates, because they could still have a possibility of winning. I think you have a better, more exciting, more vibrant opportunity in either one of these. But I'm 100% 5 commissioners in 5 districts, and you vote for your commissioner, and I'll vote for mine.
That's a ward system.
A ward system, although the state still calls them districts.
Yeah, that's sort of
By
related to
just
religion, right?
Sir, in the
Ward
back,
system
you had
is
a
like
question?
religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Good, okay. Yes, ma'am.
The other side that I've heard of this, you know, where you would elect one person, you know, you would elect the person from your district.
Correct.
Is that, for example, I mean, this has been argued with city council. With city council, we elect all of them, and we are able to talk to all of them. If we elected one, we would be delegating a lot to that one, and that one is the only one that could represent us.
Correct.
So,
And that's the reason that you want to interview them, make good decisions, bring forth good quality candidates. And I think you'll have a better choice of good quality candidates in that environment, because more people will have hope that they can win.
what about the dealings between the 5?
Well, again, they have a job to do, and that's to run the county. They have $433 million budget and nearly 2,000 employees to work with. They have a lot of things on their plate. I was talking to Jeff Cahoon a couple months ago, and he was trying to get a hold of Matt Jones. And Matt called him back after a week, and Jeff had left him a couple of pretty nasty phone messages. Matt called him and says, Jeff, I'm so stuffed up with administrative work, I haven't been able to get back to you. And I believe that's a problem in the county commissions.
Just that, you mean just as far as numbers?
Just as far as the numbers and the amount of work and responsibility that they have. Yes, sir.
So before I look for change, I always ask myself, why change? What do I get by
If it ain't
changing?
broke, why change it?
So for me, I hear 3 issues. One is that by changing from our present 300,000 people that get to vote to go to either 90,000 or 60,000 approximately, I will get better representation than I have now. Is that one of the key issues that?
In my mind, yes.
Okay.
At this point, my position is that, and I've spoken to a number of people in both parties, is that when you have one-party rule, whether it's Republican or Democrat, if they've been in there for an extensive period of time, it has never proven to be a good thing for the citizens. All over the country, I talked to people in South Carolina where they had similar situations where the Republicans have been in power, and their world wasn't as nice as they'd like. So I think we could use with a little fresh air.
So you're assuming by making a change, we'll actually see a change in representatives by political party, although that's not necessarily what would happen. So if I might, so the second issue that I'm understanding is that, at least anecdotally, by having more commissioners, we'll have each of them having less work, and that may mean that they will maybe represent by responding more quickly to people than they are now. Whether you get the response you want or not is another question.
Exactly.
So,
But then you get a chance to vote them out the next time.
So for me, that still seems to be anecdotal. Can you share with us as whether or not, at the moment, the commissioners feel like they're completely overdone and really need help besides what they've got right now?
So did everybody hear the question? The question was whether the commissioners feel like they're overworked now. I will say the commissioners, sorry, the camera. I would say the commissioners are very busy. They have a lot on their plate. and I don't know the specifics about, Matt. I do know, there's a steep learning curve. So I would give Matt a little bit of latitude as a new commissioner just coming on, that there is a lot to absorb. I think it really depends on what you want the commissioners to be doing. Do you want them to be more out in the community doing things or running the county? And that's the choice that the people will be able to make.
See the lady behind you, question first. You, yes.
I was going to say to the 5 by district versus the 3 and 2 at large. One thing that you can also think about is when you have 2 at large, they're not as beholden to parochial interests as if they're all 5 from a district. So if there is one district that has a deep need, those 2 are free to support that need and not just represent the narrow interests of their district. So that's what I see as the advantage to the 3 and 2 split.
That's a possibility. I don't believe that that's the trail that we would be going down, but I understand your thoughts. Go ahead.
So I just wonder if we can come back to the slides on home rule.
Yeah, I was going to
proportional
comment, we have
representation.
5 minutes, so let's do that. And then we do have to actually be out of here by 8:45, so, yeah, so let's do those slides that you were talking
Super.
about.
If I could just-
Because it relates to the questions. It relates to the questions that are coming up about more flexibility.
Right, but it's a different topic because we have to address that with the state.
But
And
it's
that's a different
governance. No,
petition.
we can do it ourselves with home rule.
Do you want to go there, Tom?
No,
So,
home rule.
Anyway, my work right now, and I'm looking for another 50 or 60 circulate. It's a simple process. I was at the county fair. I could have used 40 or 50 of you there, and we'd have had 10 or 15,000 votes or signatures already in hand. I managed to acquire 500 by myself, standing in the entrance to the fairground for 2 or 3 hours a day. Anyway, I've got a really simple script if you're interested, and I've also got another plan that we're working on, is that I'm going to next...
We need to move on, we only have just
Okay.
a few minutes. So, yeah, so I think maybe we can send out Gary's information to people that are on this.
Tell us the website, Gary.
Yeah, do the website.
District representation for BoulderCounty.com. John Caldera was kind enough to tell me that was really a band.
It's F-O-R.
And it's F-O-R, not the digit.
District representation
The
for.
petition is
Boulder
on
County.
there, some information about why we think this is good, press release. The script is there to help you if you wish to participate. And I have hundreds of petitions ready to give you clipboards, shirts, pens. I'm the supplier. So please contact me.
And people can sign tonight.
You can sign tonight, I've got petitions.
Okay.
So Celeste, do you want to talk? Do you want me to talk or?
Real quick.
So here's the section of the Constitution that talks about home rule, and you can see it's in the Constitution, which means it's hard to change. So statute can be changed by the legislators, by the General Assembly, but Constitution can only be changed by the vote of the people. That's one of the reasons our ballots are so long, is because they're trying to change the Constitution. Okay, let's go to the next one. Here's some examples. Pitkin County, they elect them, the 5 commissioners at large. They used to elect them by district. The remaining commissioners will fill a vacancy if one of the commissioners drops dead or whatever. And they hire a county manager who appoints basically the treasurer, the person who does the treasurer work, and they appoint a coroner and a surveyor, as I said before. And I write this down so I don't have to remember it. Weld County has 2 elected at large, 3 by districts, which is option number 2 on the petition. This is an interesting thing. If there is a commissioner vacancy, there is a county council. They are also elected officials, and they fill the vacancy for the county commissioner with a person of the same political party. So I think what Michelle was saying about that part's in statute made, even though they're home rule in Weld County, they still have to follow some of the stuff that is in the statute, because home rule for county is not as powerful as home rule for city. And they don't have a county manager, but they pairs of commissioners will coordinate the county departments. And same thing with treasurer, coroner, and surveyor, they're appointed. They might be called something else. And then here's one other kind of interesting thing. So under home rule, you can have interesting election options like Pitkin. Even before we had Prop 108 where the Democrats can vote, the unaffiliated can vote on a Democratic ballot or the unaffiliated can vote on a Republican ballot, even before that, Pitkin puts all the candidates on all the primary ballots.
California.
Like California or Louisiana, yeah. And fusion just means you're one candidate, but you're represented by more than one party. So it's not the right actual terminology. I should probably call it open primaries or something. Okay, and then another thing that you could do, according to Dwight Shulman and Secretary of State, is you could work on instituting an election method that would achieve proportional representation. So one example that is available for municipal elections right now in Colorado is multi-winner ranked voting, but it's not currently available for county, but there'll be a bill in the next legislature. And you could also
But we could do it with home rule.
You could do it with home rule. And then another option is approval voting, and this is what they use for CU student elections. It just means you can vote for as many people as you want, even if you're only filling one seat. So if you don't like Darth Vader, but you like all the other candidates, you can vote for all the other candidates. You know, it's a way to keep Darth Vader from getting elected. So. All right. Great. And there's some pamphlets in the back on single winner and multi-winner voting methods if you are interested in learning more about these.
And a ton on the website that the league's
and
voting
we have
methods.
little business cards at the website if you don't want to take a pamphlet.
So thank you everybody for coming, and we need to get out of here in 15 minutes. Thank you, Michelle. And our voting